Good afternoon, everyone. Just going to give it another 30 seconds or so as people come into the webinar room. Okay, great. I think we'll make a start. It's 4 past the hour. So thank you all for making the time to join us this afternoon. Delighted to have Dave Fenlon and Laurent Fendel from Nutritional Growth Solutions here today, giving an update on the quarterly activities that was published to the market on Friday last week. Just a quick housekeeping, open to taking questions after the presentation. Please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen to type in the question, and I can put that to Dave and Laurent. So I'll now hand over to you, Dave. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric, and thanks for everyone who's on the call, and welcome to the Q1 results call for NGS. Laurent, the CEO, our CEO, will lead you through the result. But before she does, I just thought it would be appropriate to introduce myself, recently joining the board, and just to give you a bit of an update about how excited I am about being part of the NGS team. As you know, NGS is the world's only supplier and manufacturer of nutritional pediatric products that are scientifically formulated, and that suite of products is very exciting. And in 30 years of being in the FMCG and retail business, I have to say this is one of the most exciting opportunities I've ever seen. We are a business that's very much focused on growth. We're a business that is going to be at the forefront of innovating, and we're a business that's been created and taking forward these products based on the obsession and passion from the Schneider Institute. So I just wanted to say, really, really pleased to be part of the team. It's a fantastic business built on that obsession, built on that consumer insight from those leading doctors at the Schneider Institute. And Laurent will take you through the quarterly results. And please, if there are any questions, we'll be more than happy to take them. So over to you, Laurent.
Thank you so much, Dave. So let me just share my screen real quick. Okay, can you see my screen now?
We can.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So thank you, Eric. Thank you, Dave. My name is Laurent Fendel. I'm the CEO and Managing Director of Nutritional Growth Solutions, and I will give you a very brief summary today of our results for Q1 of 2022. In terms of the key growth initiatives that we had going on this quarter, I would say probably the biggest one is getting the New Zealand manufacturing up and running. So finally having product manufactured in New Zealand and shipped to distributors in Australia and in China. We also started sales on Walmart.com and GrangeMe.com as part of our channel strategy and really diversifying our sales channels in North America. We launched the new kids protein product line, bringing us to 24 SKUs in the United States. And obviously, we had the appointment of David Fenlon as our non-executive chairman. So really starting with the financial results, we ended the quarter with $631,000 in sales, which despite of inventory shortages still is a 10% growth over the previous quarter. And I would say that inventory shortages really held us back this quarter. But thankfully, this has now been resolved. So first of all, the biggest hurdle that we had in Q1 was the New Zealand production, that we still didn't have product going to China, which obviously impacted how much we could sell into the China market. So now that's been resolved, and we have the product coming from New Zealand into China. The other key piece is inventory in the US, that we also had some shortages, but this is also now resolved. We now secured a full truck of whey protein from Fonterra, which really helps us with production in the United States. Moving on to the next item that happened this quarter is the launch of our new kids protein product line. And this means that, I mean, if I'm looking 1 year back, we had 3 SKUs, 3 products selling in North America. We now have 24. So that makes a big difference. And I would say that one of the biggest things is now that we are going to retail and speaking to retailers and getting more traction there, this is one key place where I see that we're getting advantage with getting more products. Just means we can dominate the retail shelf more easily. On the sales channels aspect, we started sales on Walmart.com and BrangeMe.com, but this is really just the start, as we are now starting to really diversify our sales channels in the United States. So starting with the Walmart.coms of the world, but then also going into actual physical distribution in North America. For China, we started production at our New Zealand manufacturing facility, NIGN, and started production of 15,000 units this quarter. These products are then being shipped to our distributors in Australia and into China, including Chemist Warehouse China, Ultra Health, and Australia Sunshine. So basically now we have product coming from New Zealand into these distributors and can really expand sales into China. The NAG Nutritional facility has big capacity, so they can produce 10 million units a year, which means we have still a lot of room to grow. And last but not least, we appointed Mr. David Fenlon this quarter as our non-executive chairman. And David has over 30 years of experience in retail and consumer goods across Europe, Australia, Asia, and North America. He was previously the managing director of Australia and New Zealand for Blackmores, and more recently, the CEO and managing director for BWX. So I, for one, am very happy and pleased to have you on board, David. So thank you for that. What you should expect seeing from us in the next 6 months or so, in terms of announcements, in terms of how we're going to grow the business in the next few months. So we will continue to execute on our 3-pillar growth plan, which means adding more products. So you should expect some announcements around new product launches, adding more territories or growing our global expansion. So this means you should see announcement for us regarding our China distribution, as well as distribution into other territories, such as more territories in Europe, in addition to Italy, as well as more countries in Southeast Asia, and also Australia and New Zealand are in the cards for us. And last, we are still looking into much more growth in retail in the US, in North America. So more announcements around getting more retail distribution in the US. This is all for me for today. Very happy to answer any questions you have today.
Thanks, Laurent, and thank you, Dave. So just a reminder to our participants, if you'd like to ask a question, to please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Just while we wait for that, Laurent, I might just kick things off. So you touched on the stock shortages impacting sales for the quarter. Can you maybe just elaborate a little bit more on, I guess, what those stock shortages were, how they impacted you? And, you know, you talked about some initiatives now being in place to overcome those, but what are the expectations going into Q2 and beyond?
Yeah, so I would say the biggest one was in China, because we really wanted to start pushing on sales in this territory, and we are seeing very nice demand coming from our distributors as well as from our customers. But since we were selling product coming from the US and waiting for the product to come from New Zealand, we were kind of stuck that quarter. But finally now we have the New Zealand production in place and product being shipped both to China for our flagship store, on Tmall flagship store, but also to our distributors so that they can sell it to their customers as well. So that has been a big leap for us because this really enables us to start really pushing on sales into this territory. The other one I would say is in the US, because we really broadened our suite of products and variety. We also got stuck with some inventory shortages. So that has already been resolved now as well, with getting some whey protein from Fonterra and getting more and more production in Utah, in our manufacturing facility in Utah.
Thanks, Laurent. That's helpful. Just you touched on the US operations, and obviously a key part of NGS's growth strategies around building the retail part of the business in the US. You've obviously got an arrangement in place with Walmart and Range Me. What else is happening sort of behind the scenes? Is there an expectation that you might sign up other major retailers? I think it's Brian who's the head of the US operations there. So what's he been doing behind the scenes, and what any other updates you can share with us throughout the quarter?
Of course. So this quarter we participated in a conference called ECRM, and ECRM in the US is a meeting where all of the retailers are basically coming in to meet with new products. And we met with dozens of retailers and actually won the Buyer's Choice Award in this conference, meaning that the retailers were one of two products that they were mostly enthusiastic about and really liked. So following this meeting, we had many follow-ups, and now working with different retailers to get into distribution with many retailers in the US. So going through category reviews and getting into that distribution. But yeah, I think this is a really big one for us. So I always say that we have really two big initiatives in this company, which is one now China, which can be huge when successful, and the other one is retail distribution in the US, because this is really what can take us from being in the $4 million in sales to the $100 million in sales, and that can happen with a few good retail accounts.
Great, thanks, Laurent. Maybe just one more on the US before I look at some of the questions that have come through. You mentioned it's very early days in terms of the relationship with Walmart and online sales there. Any early observations or perhaps any sort of expectations for that channel?
Yeah, so Walmart.com is going quite well and on pace like our Amazon store. So we are seeing more and more growth in this channel. We are now also moving to get fulfillment by Walmart, which is something that Walmart really gives for few brands. So not everyone can get to be, even if you are on Walmart.com, they won't take anyone to their logistic warehouse and do the fulfillment for them. So that is going to be a big jump for us in sales as well on that platform. But really, I think it's a really good way for us to see that this is a great channel, and moving on to other big retail.com channels.
Thanks, Laurent. Maybe turning our minds to China, maybe first of all, because it's quite topical, Shanghai is in some hard lockdowns. I know it's obviously very early days for sales in China, but have you noticed any impact with Shanghai being in lockdown and therefore online sales?
Yes, up until now, we haven't had a lot of product to sell. So we haven't seen the effect on sales. We are seeing on the platform that sales are being impacted. And I know that in general for Tmall Global, for example, they're seeing up to 20 or 25% of products that are being shipped to customers at some point were getting returned to warehouse just because they couldn't get to the consumers because of the transportation issues that they were experiencing. We are seeing that now being slowly resolved. So China will, I think, always be high opportunity, but also higher risk market. And this has always been the case, I think, for this market. But we are seeing it become more and more mature. And I think for Shanghai, for example, when the port was in lockdown, we could still get our product to other ports. So there are ways when you have the right team and the right, I think there are always ways.
Right, thanks. The question has just come through about scientific or research linkages in your key markets. So obviously you've got the Schneider's Hospital, but the questions come through saying, will NGS also look to develop scientific or research linkages in your key markets to support the brand and industry engagement?
It's a really good question. So this is one of the things that we have been looking into. We will do it when we find partners that we believe we can do great research together with. So we are already evaluating some opportunities in China, for example, working with some hospitals. But I think that we will actually do it when we feel that there is a lot of value for the market, for the customers in doing this additional research.
So just on the topic of research, is there any update you can provide on any current clinical trials that are underway?
Yeah, we have a few clinical trials that are going on right now. So we have the some trials that are running together with growth hormone treatment. So we're testing to see the effect of healthy hearts together with growth hormone treatment. Once we get results to this clinical study, assuming these are favorable results, then that will help us on the medical channel in the US specifically, but also in other markets, because this will then mean that kids who are getting prescribed with growth hormone will also be able to get prescribed with healthy hearts together with it. In addition, we are running clinical studies on children who are experiencing ADHD and are getting treated for ADHD, and these treatments sometimes jeopardize their growth. So again, once we get results from that clinical study, and assuming the results are favorable, then this will also be able to help us with the medical channel, getting children who are being prescribed for Ritalin or other treatments for ADHD together with healthy heights to just offset the effect on their growth. In addition, we have the sports product that was designed, and now also looking to get that into a clinical study in the coming few months, now that most COVID restrictions have been lifted, at least here in Israel. So training is back and kids are going back to play soccer a few times a week, and we can really get this clinical study up and running again.
Thanks, Laurent. Jumping around a little bit, an email has come through just about the US expansion. Do you have in mind some sort of ratio between online and offline sales in the US? And as you grow the offline sales, do you see some sort of cannibalization between the retail and the online sales?
Yeah, so usually what we're seeing in mature businesses, similar to us in the US, is that you would expect about 25% of revenue to come from the online business and the rest to come from the offline business. Usually you don't see a lot of cannibalization because having the retail distribution also is a bit of a marketing agent, because people go to the store, they see the product, so it gets more credibility because you see it on shelves, and the first stores that we are going into will be more of the premium, natural kind of stores. So really build credibility through these initial channels. And also just by seeing the product on the shelf, it's a reminder, because what you see is what's on top of mind. So usually quite the opposite. Like people would sometimes see the product on shelf and just order it on Amazon because it's easier for them.
Got it. Just thinking about the chemist warehouse relationship, obviously you haven't had much stock at all to sell into China yet, but it's a big organisation, and particularly in Australia, and it wouldn't be a quarterly webinar if I didn't ask you about sales in Australia, Laurent. But how do you see that relationship progressing, as you get your hands on more stock, and is that your entry to sales in Australia?
So Australia is an important market for us. I mean, and I think obviously being listed in Australia and having many people exposed to our brand, we really want to get it to market. I don't think there's a day that goes by without me getting an email from someone in Australia asking where they can get the product. So I really want to make sure that that people in Australia can also purchase Healthy Heights. Right now, we're evaluating the right sales channels for us. And obviously, now that we also have the New Zealand production, it makes it significantly easier for us to launch into Australia. So this is why we're now evaluating the right sales channel. And obviously, once we launch in Australia, you'll be the first to know.
Great, thanks, Laurent. Dave, question for you has come through. Do you see any or many synergies between North American distribution partners, BWX and NGS?
Look, I think the learning from BWX is very clear. You have to have a very good channel plan. I think importantly, Walmart.com is a strong retailer. Many retailers follow that brand and use it as an early indicator of success. I think importantly, BWX had strong relationships in Sprouts, in Whole Foods, and that natural channel. I can certainly see us ranging products in those channels. Hopefully that will be sooner rather than later. And then ultimately Target, which is the main mass retailer. It's more of a supermarket in the US, as many of you will know. We had a strong relationship there. So like anything in good business, we'll leverage the relationships that have been built previously to try and open doors. But most importantly, this is a great product. It's got clinical proven trials, and the retailers will accept it based on those principles. So we'll use the relationships. It's a massive market, and we'll be leveraging everything we can to execute brilliantly in the US.
Great. You might want to almost turn your video off for this question, Dave. Laurent, the questions come through just about Dave and his appointment. And I guess, how you found things to date working with Dave, but also maybe expectations around some of those doors that maybe he may be able to open that you may perhaps just alluded to then.
Yeah, I think that when we started this company and even during the IPO, we were still very R&D minded because we're coming from the hospital and the product really started from the research and development. This was kind of the mindset. But at some point, about a year and a half ago, a big part of our effort became really the commercialization. So now we have the product and really need to get it into market. So I think that David brings a lot of that mindset to the company, which was very much needed. So much of the marketing mind, branding, sales. So for me, he's, just started by just being a big, like a sounding board and someone to be able to consult with, and obviously brings a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge. So I think he's just the right man in the right time.
And Eric, you should never answer a question about yourself, but I'm going to. I think importantly, what we've been able to do with this sort of change is get a little more focused and agree our priorities. This business is not short of a good idea, but what we have got to do is execute brilliantly. So if we had to look at what we've done recently, we've really tidied up and been very clear about which are our lead markets and which are our secondary markets. We've got very clear focus on new product development, and we only need to be successful in the US in 2 or 3 retailers, and this business transforms itself. So we're really clear about what we are going to do, and we're also just as clear about what we're not going to do. We're a small business today, and we must prioritize well.
Makes sense. Maybe just thinking about that. So you talked about some of the foundations that have been laid. obviously there's no guidance out there in the market about when you become profitable, but do you think about profitability and the timeline and pathway to get to that point? Maybe it's a question for both of you.
Laurent, you can take that.
Yeah, so I think, yes, we are thinking about getting to profitability, and this is an important one for us. This is why we are also very, the gross margin is very important for us, because my belief is that gross margin is going to be extremely important in getting us into profitability sooner rather than later. It will be dependent mostly, I think, on distribution. I mean, when we get to broad distribution, it will be much easier to get to profitability. So again, I think it's just getting to that tipping point of getting into this mass distribution without compromising our gross margin, which is something that fortunately we can do because we're a premium product and we have the clinical support.
All right, we've got time for maybe one or two more questions. So if you do have a question, please use the Q&A function at the bottom. Just thinking a bit more sort of at a higher level in terms of the sectors or industries. Would you say that infant formula would be, you know, one of the most comparable sectors that compared to, you know, the industry you're operating in? And I guess, you know, what are some trends that you're seeing in that market that might be applicable to you know, what you're doing?
Well, I think that we are seeing quite a few trends. I wouldn't say that infant formula necessarily is the same or most comparable with our industry. I think we're also a bit more medical, I would say. But in addition, we are seeing a few trends. So one trend that we're seeing is definitely the vegan or plant-based, which is growing worldwide, I would say. We did add the Kid Shake Vegan to our portfolio and are seeing growing demand to that product. But when it comes to our clinically proven products, these are still very much dairy, because we just couldn't get the same clinical results with plant-based proteins as we could with dairy, because, you know, dairy is quite a magical thing. We're still really focused on dairy, but also seeing the vegan. One other, I would say, trend that we are seeing is the online. So for example, even if you look at Walmart, in the past, Walmart was all about retail, but now, and I think this was really even fueled more by the recent pandemic, we are seeing Walmart.com growing and growing, and we're seeing much more growth coming from that channel than from the retail channel. So I think the secret will be having both and knowing how to manage both the retail as well as the online channel.
Thanks, Laurent. So it looks like we've exhausted all the questions there. So thank you to everyone for joining, and thank you, Dave and Laurent, for your time today and sharing the update. Honestly, lots of exciting things happening, growing in two really huge markets. You've got the NZ production sorted and being shipped out now too, and looking forward to seeing some product on the shelves in Australia at some point too. So all very exciting, operating in huge markets. And so thank you for the update. I might hand back to Dave or Laurent just to close things out.
Yeah, look, thank you for everybody's time. Very useful questions. Of course, we're both available if there's any other follow-up questions that you have. More than happy to answer those. Look, in summary, a 10% improvement quarter on revenue is a solid result. It's certainly not an exceptional result, but I think we've made it clear to you that we've faced into some somewhat suppressed opportunities there because of the supply chain challenges. We certainly see that those supply chain challenges are now more in the rearview mirror and behind us. We think we've laid the foundations in that challenge, or resolve that problem, as Laurent has said. And I think importantly, as I mentioned earlier on, prioritization of the markets which we're in, the US and China, has been clear for us in this quarter. So we certainly do see a forward trajectory of growth. We see a strong business ahead of us. The new product development has been a really good piece of work undertaken by the business in the last 6 to 12 months, and that really is a lead indicator from what we can do. So we'll continue to keep focusing on our 3-pillar strategy and execution is top of our agenda. We know that we are a business with growth potential, and Q2 and Q3 this year is for us to unlock that. That's our priorities. But finally, if there are any follow-ups or there is anything that we can help with, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us, including Eric, and we look forward to giving you a strong performance at the end of Q2.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.